Welcome to the Giant Step podcast with your host, Maurice Bernstein, as we take you on a journey into music and culture from the world of Giant Step.
Hello and welcome to the Giant Step podcast. I'm your host, Maurice Bernstein. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Giant Step. And this week's conversation is with Brian Brater. Brian is the co-founder of Rawkus Records, UPROXX, Big Frame, and AuDigent. And we will be talking about his journey in the entertainment industry, from growing up in New York to the start of Rawkus Records, and finally with AuDigent. We also talk about his thoughts on data and where the industry is going. Please keep in mind that this was originally recorded as part of Giant Step's Instagram Live series, which was on January the 22nd, 2021. So please excuse any audio or sound issues. And also, if you're interested in following Giant Step, please do so on Instagram at Giant Step and visit our website at giantstep.net. And please feel free to send any comments or suggestions regarding our podcast series. So now, please enjoy my conversation with Brian Brater. Brian, there you are.
All right.
Okay, we had a couple of technical difficulties in our when we were testing it, but you're here. How are you, Brian?
Here. Great to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah. So I'm really happy that you agreed to do this Instagram Live with me. I mean, you know, you and I are old friends, not only, you know, on a personal level, but also in music and culture, and then all the other stuff. But I think what's interesting about you, Brian, is you know, you have managed to you know, take your skill set and take it across different verticals within entertainment and technology, and build great things out of it. So I think you know, you have a lot to contribute as far as thought leadership and just experience in doing all those great things. So I think the first thing I'd like to do is for you to kind of tell us a little bit about, you know, your background. You know, I know you grew up in New York, how that was and how you managed to get to where you are now. So tell us about the beginning, Brian.
The beginning, I mean, the beginning was so many past lives ago, but thank heavens I don't really have too many distinct memories of those days. You know, the beginning for me was 1973. I was born in Miami Beach. I think my mother wanted to birth me in some warmer weather, having been born in February. Very soon thereafter, ended up in New York City, you know, classic municipal crisis, late 70s New York City. You know, one of my earliest memories is of the garbage piled up on either side of the sidewalk, you know, taller than I was. So I felt like I was going down this futuristic tunnel of garbage. You know, I remember the blackout of 1977 and my mother having to walk down 25 flights of stairs to get eggs. And I just remember, you know, really, you know, very different New York City. I'll never forget going to roller skate at the Roxy, you know, on those family days after kind of the all-night parties. And I remember being, you know, on the exterior of the Roxy, and it was just like you know, it was like a war zone on the exterior. And then you go inside and there'd be like this magical place, which was the Roxy Club.
And how old were you?
I mean, I was little. I mean, we're
So
talking
this
like,
was sort of like they'd have roller skating for families to go to during the day. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be like the days I would, my parents were divorced. I think it was the days I saw my father. He would bring me there every now and again. And I was obsessed with that part of 70s New York, which is, on the outside, they were fucked up. I mean, it was.
You can swear on my Instagram, by the way.
Okay,
Right?
great.
So,
Well, it was, acid rain was the color of the city. Everything was black. There's garbage everywhere. In the 70s, New York was, more, especially downtown, was a total shithole.
Yeah.
But then you go inside these spaces, and I'll call Roxy a creative space, as I would call all the clubs. And certainly, anything having to do with artists or music in New York in the late 70s was very special. Just getting a little piece of that in me, in my the first 6-7 years of my cultural DNA had a lasting impact on me. Went on, was your classic kind of mid 80s, late 80s kid running around the city. Didn't have a whole lot of discipline, at least in my house, as far as curfew or really any rules. So I was able to run around the city, get, that I think that vital experience of going to all these clubs, underage, fake ID, hanging out with club kids, and just soaking in this, it's just a very different.
And you were at high school at Horace Mann, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And is that where you met Jared?
I mean, listen, I grew up 10 blocks away from Jared on the Upper East Side. I mean, I met Jared probably in kindergarten.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, a long time.
And for those that don't know, Jarrett Meyer was Brian's co-founder at Rawkus, and then you guys went on and you did UPROXX together, and obviously still very, very good friends. So that's I never knew you guys met in kindergarten. Wow, that's
we go
way
very,
back,
very way back.
So you were at a fancy school.
I mean, my mom, immigrant. Was born in it was called Palestine back then. I kind of have a mixed background, a little bit of Middle Eastern, a little bit of Jew, a little bit of Romanian gypsy blood. My mom was an immigrant, though. She when she came to America, she had no money, couldn't speak English, and was one of those blessed people. Very beautiful woman. She became one of Wilhelmina Model's first models. So she was able to make a little bit of money in the garment center, classic Jewish, foundation, stepping stone in business and in building wealth. Made a little bit of money and was able to send me to private school, which obviously I was very grateful for. Just the experiences of going to that school in particular, where I certainly was not the rich kid at the school,
right?
And being around that kind of power and wealth also influenced me, and I'm grateful for that experience as well.
And when did you first start sort of like feeling that music, becoming obsessed with music? When did that happen?
That happened for me in 1986 when I started playing bass. So, New York City is it's a great place for a teenager, right? I don't really know if it's the greatest place for, you know, a younger, a younger child. So for me, I was like cooped up quite a bit, 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old. I mean, I remember those years in particular. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I was just, I don't think I was the happiest person.
Right.
And then, I remember going to Manny's Music on 48th Street with Jarrett. Jared had just bought a guitar. I didn't want to be the, I wanted to have
Jared's just joined, so if he disagrees with this, then he's.
Jared took me to Manny's. He got a guitar. He eventually got a very nice guitar, a Roger Sadowski Stratocaster.
Wow.
I wanted to do me, so I got a bass, and pretty much right there, I was, hooked. Especially on that frequency. Excelled at playing the bass, and had that amazing high school experience of doing some gigs, playing at CBGBs, playing with jazz bands, learning how to play upright bass. And that was it for me.
So hip hop, I mean, you were listening to all the music that was coming, sort of like that you were getting affected to, but hip hop, you didn't have a love of hip hop at that point, or
yeah, I mean, listen, I wasn't first wave, like I wasn't at the Herc.
Well, you're too young, yeah.
I would have liked to have been though.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely consider myself second wave, just being in the Village in 1986, 87. I mean, it was all punk, hardcore, hip hop, everything. And for me, I was really just personally invested in studying jazz and, the history of jazz, especially in New York City. It's in high school I started having fun with gear and reverbs and drum machines and 4 and 8-track recorders and all that stuff. Fast forward a bit, I'm at Brown University, not entirely doing my homework. And one thing about Brown, it had very cutting edge studios, recording studios, a real electronic music suite with one of the first Kurzweil keyboards, and the first Akai samplers, the 850, the 900. We had an SP12. Eventually, we got an SP1200. And Jaron and I would make beats. We became friendly with quite a few of the local rappers in the New England area. Some really talented artists like Ja Ute and Prospectors on a Mission and some others. Had a great experience. I mean, we made their mixtapes. We were their live music directors. We were selling T-shirts. We were, doing relatively big shows. We were opening up for artists like LL Cool J. And then we visited all these A&R guys at the major labels.
In New York, mainly?
In New York. This is like 93-ish. And I believe we had just...
For your band to get signed, you were trying to get signed as artists?
Our band, but the MCs that Jared and I were working with. we were in the band to the extent that we were the live music directors. So I would play bass during the shows, but I wasn't really in the band, I guess.
Yeah.
I was more focused on the MC. And we met with guys like Ruben Rodriguez.
I remember him at Elektra, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And pretty much any of the leading A&R guys in '93. So they're like at MCA, a few other companies. And they were, at that point, the music industry was on fire. Okay, this is before the peak, right? The peak is 99, 2000, like right before Napster. This is about almost 10 years before the peak.
Right.
On fire. And I believe it was Ruben who looked at Jarrett and I. He's like, just start your own fucking label. Like, fuck us. We're whack.
He was right.
And that's what we did.
And so you were still at Brown when you made a decision to start your own label, or was that when you guys had graduated?
Jarrett and I accelerated our graduation by literally staying at school for 2 years straight. We didn't leave. So we did summer sessions and winter. And we got out about a year early.
Oh, okay.
And so in the beginning of our senior year, we moved into 65 Reed Street in Tribeca, which is where the Rawkus headquarters with the blue roof and all the shenanigans.
And when you were at Brown, I think that's when we first met. When you guys would start coming to Giant Step.
We just had this conversation, and I think I was a fan of Giant Step before we met, and then we formally connected through Danny Wyatt.
Yeah.
When Jared and I were just recording some of the initial Rawkus records, like Rose Family and Seven Universal, and the stuff that when John Forte was A&R at the company.
And where did the name come from? How did you?
My vague memories just coming up with it. Just changing the spelling of a word. It actually started as raw management. Obviously, that was not original. And I think we just added the KUS, and then we spelled it out in caps, and we're like, bing. The logo creation is another story.
Right.
That happened. First, the blade was straight, and then the blade bent. And I believe, it's something that Jarrett and I and Tim Ronan and a few other designers worked on until we perfected it. We spent a lot of time getting that razor blade to look the way it did, getting the RAWKUS to be set in the handle of the blade, and just even the, just the pop art vibe around it.
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't know, I mean, the Rawkus label really defined an era of hip hop, not only in New York but globally. I mean, I would say hip hop. There were some bands, hip hop groups that were kind of on the vibe, but you had a label that basically represented that. Whereas I wouldn't say, I mean, Tommy Boy had its own sound, but it had a lot of other sort of like sound. But the backpacking hip hop, it was Rawkus. I mean, and then you just started churning out artists that were just game changing artists. Tell us a little bit about sort of like, what that was like, working with people like Mos Def, Pharomonch, the Lyricist Lounge, the Sound Bombing mixtapes. Your marketing was unique. Like I said, you were game changers.
Yeah. I think, we were just at the end of the day, I think we'll be remembered as, good patrons for the movement. I mean, we definitely invested heavily in lyricism and in, beat making, and in a certain vibe, a certain style. And, it wasn't one thing. A lot of people call us like, the backpack label, but we were also putting out like that New York fire. Like, let's not forget we had Pharoah Monch signed and, Cool G Rap. And, we worked with the Duck Down crew and just, we put out Eminem's first records.
I was going to say, yeah.
But, I think for me, things really changed when LP, Just, and Mr. Len at Company Flow allowed us to participate in in their community, which was extremely diehard. Company Flow were really, if you really want to talk about like the very beginning, it's going to be Fun Crusher Plus. Now, at the same time, there was the Lyricist Lounge, and we became, really friendly with Anthony and Danny. And then, after that, Perry joined the Lyricist Lounge, and it's through the Lyricist Lounge we met Mos. I knew Kweli just from like hanging out with him and, doing what kids do together. So I remember just in a social environment, just being around Kweli. You had Mos Def, you had Kweli, you had Lyricist Lounge. All of that was percolating in 97, 98.
And the other the other thing that people need to remember is you were an independent label at that time as well, right?
Yeah, well, not only were we an independent label, we were an independent label with funding, right?
Right.
And you have to understand, at that time, at least, the company that Jared and I looked at as far as like a model was Loud Records. Right.
I think everybody had that as their model at that time. Right?
Yes. And, we learned a lot from Steve Rifkin, and from John Rifkin and from SRC. So that was happening simultaneously as well. The word got out, these guys seem like good people, good patrons, hip hop lovers. We like their team, right? They have funding, and they mean business, and we did. Back then your videos had to be amazing. Like, your street promotion had to be thorough. The streets needed to co-sign what you were working on.
Yeah.
If the streets did not co-sign it, you had nothing.
And that's why a lot of the major labels just failed to break into hip hop, because they had no credibility. Didn't matter how good some of those artists were that they signed, but they just had no credibility.
Well, that was almost the kiss of death, signing to a major, right? Like, you wanted to be on Loud, right? You wanted to be, if you were out west, you wanted to be on Priority, Death Row. East Coast, New York in particular, as Loud transitioned, right? Because they went from like, Wu-Tang, Mobb Deep, Big Pun, Alcoholics. I was into Loud when they put out the Madcap record. Jared and I love that record. And then there was an opening for Rawkus, and that's when we just, you know, we went ballistic. We put out more 12 inches than, you know, probably almost any indie label at the time. We had mega fandom, kids lining up around the block, kids spending thousands of dollars a year on Rawkus vinyl, CDs.
And you had your merch as well. I remember the merch. Yeah.
And the merch was moving. And it was just, you know, it was an amazing experience. You know, it was very concentrated. I think it was really about a, you know, 5-6 year period between 97, 2002, 2003, but it ended with, you know, amazing catalog, amazing lyricism. You know, I was listening to, you know, Black Star instrumental vinyl a couple of days ago, just listening to High Tech, and I'm just like, this is so good. You know, I'm not gonna. It even sounds better today. I mean, that's how good.
I mean, some of those records, I mean, are just timeless. They're, you know, you put them on now. You put them on in a club.
No, and I forgot to mention Fat Beats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Fat Beats was our. I mean, they were our partners as far as, you know, all that vinyl clout. When you'd walk into a DJ store in any city, half the wall were Rawkus Records. You know, I remember, you know, working with, you know, we had to work with a lot of promoters. Like, we had to get airplay, we had to do all that stuff. And I remember one of the biggest promoters in the DC area, he was up in Philadelphia, you know, going from store to store. And he's like, gave me a call. He's like, Brian, you'll never be bigger than you are right now. He's like, 3/4 of the vinyl end cap in every store is Rawkus or Rawkus distribution. And it was amazing. I mean, it was amazing until the one day I walk in, everybody's got like this thing, Napster, on their laptops. I'm like, what's this? And then, you know, I had 10,000 songs on my laptop in a week. And, you know, we knew it wasn't good. Fortunately, we were able to stick it out, and, you know, the catalog found a good place in Universal Music Group. I'm happy Jimmy Iovine cut a deal with Jared and me. And I'm really proud of the legacy. I mean, this is something that is, you know, a lot of it is lost. It's not like all the 12 inches are, you know, you can buy them. You know, some of the material is not available on, you know, the major streaming platforms. You know, we were very about live events and those moments. We really weren't the best archivists,
right,
and catalogers.
Yeah. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I can say the same about us as well. Yeah,
exactly. Back then, it wasn't
as easy.
You know,
nobody had phones, so it just wasn't that simple. Yes. So I also, you know, obviously had a record label, an independent record label, and it was great when you would start having success with an artist, but then when you had to start playing those games of radio, like basically the big boy games, that's when it started getting a little crazy. Can you tell one of your crazy radio promotion stories, which
I mean,
with a certain person who shall remain nameless?
Yeah, I certainly won't. You know, I'm definitely not going to describe the majority of my radio promotion experiences. I mean, I think for me, the most incredible moment of the experience of hearing your music on the radio. Because for me, that's really what it was about. It wasn't really about going on the road and doing the promotion. It was when we put out Simon Says by Pharoah Monch. Simon Says, get the fuck up. You know, Jared and I were getting calls like, turn on Hot 97, turn on Hot 97. And you have to understand, back in 99, like, you needed Funkmaster Flex on your team.
Oh, yeah. Nobody played your records just because they liked them. Yeah.
He was the king as far as like that entree, that door into, you know, hits for the year. And he got his Pharoah Monch Simon Says record, and then during, you know, drive time, prime time rush hour, you know, 4, 5, 6 o'clock traffic, he played that record 40 times in a row. And he just kept bringing it back, dropping bombs on it. And he played the record for about an hour. And I don't think he's ever done that with a record before.
Wow.
So, you know, having that experience, being a New Yorker, you know, in hip hop, you know, blasting the radio in your office with your whole team there, and everybody's just bugging. You know, that was one of the highlight. You know, I loved our parties. You know, we threw some really amazing events, but you know, I remember that experience. It was, you know, it was magic.
And before we sort of move on to, because you've done so much more since Rawkus, I just want to just mention the office, the classic office that was on Broadway, where there was a Keith Haring painting in the lobby.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. And then I think you had like 3 floors or 2 floors in that building.
We had 2 floor-through floors in kind of like that classic 4th and Broadway,
right? New York loft style,
industrial loft. Yeah, and really special place if you spend time there.
Oh yeah, and I mean, one of my main memories, besides it being extremely chaotic with people running around and a lot of stuff going on, was your office that you guys shared, where you didn't have desks, you sat on couches. Yeah. And that to me was like, where's their desk? You know, and they're successful and they don't have desks. Because I had a desk and I would sit at my desk, and when I had meetings, I would meet in the conference room. But you guys would just sit on a couch and just basically just riff and get the things done. You know, so.
Well, I mean, it was a little more than riff, but you know, you're you know, when you build a team, you know, it's not like everybody shows up day one with the skill sets and the experience, you know, no matter, and this will be a theme of our talk, you know, it's really important that you allow people to become good at what they do in real time on the job. And, you know, I think, you know, that's where I learned that, where I could bring somebody in who this wasn't even on their resume.
Right.
Give them time, give them support, mentorship, experience, and then they could become the best at that.
Right.
You know, we didn't always hire, you know, A&R people who came from major labels, and
you probably couldn't afford it. I mean, they were probably too expensive. You know?
At a certain point, we could afford it. I just, you know, nobody was packaging the way that we executive produced the music. It wasn't like the way the major labels package music.
And just want to also say a couple of other things before we move on. Brian and Jarrett, I brought you guys on as consultants when I was setting up the independent wing of Giant Step Records, and you guys helped me learn certain things that, you know, stood in very good standing for me. And then the last thing is when you guys left Rawkus, you were managing Sarah for a
Yeah.
little bit of time, which
Yeah, we were managing Jack Splash and Sarah.
Wow.
You know, we probably would have made excellent managers. I just don't think we had the opportunities, being that this was like a post Napster, post LimeWire period. There just wasn't enough for us to do for the artist that soon after the collapse of the
industry.
Yeah, but it was a good experience. You know, I loved working with Omos Keith, who went on to, you know, work with
Erica
and Frank Ocean and several others. I mean, Omos just
and Kendrick as well, right?
Yes, you know, real genius.
Yeah.
You know, Jack Splash too. I think just by 2005, 2006, you know, I was very proud of the Rawkus 50, which is kind of how we left things. That was in 2006, 2005-ish, where we released 50 albums, all digitally, all at once. You know, did a cooperative marketing plan for everybody, did the best we could. And that was, at least to date, you know, that was the end of that particular part of the ride. I'm sure that we'll bring it back though. We just don't know when.
Right.
You know, that we own the trademark, and I think at the appropriate time, I wouldn't be surprised if we try this again.
So, you know, the interesting thing about you guys is, you know, you saw the writing on the wall with the music industry, and whereas a lot of people just sort of like hung on for dear life, and it was like they didn't know anything else or didn't believe that it was going to be that bad. You guys took the skills that you had applied within the record industry and the music industry, and you then applied that to create successful companies in other fields, you know. So I think that's something that's very impressive, and you know, I want us to talk about that, because I think we can learn a lot from that.
Well, if you start as a patron, your next move should be to continue to be a patron, right? So I think we saw the power of technology and of the internet, and we wanted to be a part of that. You know, the internet was still a little weird back in 2005, 2006. Certainly broadband was just kind of becoming available, and you know, still a large part of the U.S. population doing dial-up.
Right. Or didn't even have internet. Right. Yeah.
So, you know, we were fans of certain music blogs, like Real Talk New York in the smoking section, Wrap Up. And we started to think about these early influencers, bloggers, right? That they were the content creators, and they also cultivated their own highly engaged audiences. And we saw that dynamic, and it really attracted us. So we started, you know, we became patrons of these sites. We started buying sites and creating destinations from scratch, like Warm and Glow and ultimately UPROXX.com. And then ultimately rolling up, you know, the music, the sports, the television, the film, the wrestling, the, you know, all the categories into what became UPROXX.com was an amazing experience. Treating the influencer, the blogger, in the same way that we, were patrons to lyricists and producers.
And also, I mean, like these people, and we'll talk about this more when we talk about the next endeavor, but these were the rock stars of their era. These were the important people. This is the beginning.
They were the underground rock stars.
Yeah, right. The same way you were working with the underground hip hop artists.
It wasn't, we weren't, when you think of influencer today, it's different.
Yeah.
The scale was much smaller back then. Like if a blogger had 1 million visitors in a month, it was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
If you had more, like, wow, right? This is way before Instagram, before YouTube. A great experience. It's still alive and kicking under the continued leadership of Jarrett. We sold the company twice. Warner Music Group just recently bought it. And it's still a badass.
And Talib, Talib has his very popular,
amazing
show on there, which is like a continuation. I mean, it's Jarrett, but it's like you've continued that relationship, which is awesome. So after UPROXX, you then created another endeavor.
During UPROXX,
right.
I kind of became obsessed with the Gregory brothers.
And who are the Gregory brothers, for the people who don't know?
The Gregory brothers are one of the first YouTube, mashup, postmodern musician, just content creators. And they'd have big mashups where they'd take a random vocal recording of something. It could be like George Bush or whatever it was. And they would just chop it up and tune it and turn it into something utterly ridiculous. I was hunting them down because I wanted to work with them. I was like, this is I've never really saw anything like that before. And that's when I met Sarah Penna, who was kind of the de facto manager for a lot of these big YouTube stars. Brought Jarrett into the mix and a few other people, and turned something that was informal into something formal. She was, she got organized. We incorporated. We started one of the first YouTube studios, otherwise known as a multi-channel network.
And that was Big Frame, right?
That was called Big Frame.
Yeah.
We had artists like, Mystery Guitar Man and Corridor Digital, and, Jana Marbles was a part of Big Frame in the beginning, although she outgrew us. She was so big. And what amazed me about the YouTube influencers, well, you had Mystery Guitar Man, just incredibly talented musician, making his own instruments, making videos, just really crazy next level. I'm just gonna call it postmodern shit, like just dope. You had these special effects wizards, Corridor Digital, who were doing these, sci-fi special effects, action effects. It looked like it was coming out of, 20th Century Fox or Disney. And they're just doing it like at home. And then you had Jana Marbles, who just had, enormous influence, as a someone who's just leading women online in general. And I just was, was kind of humbled by the influence that these YouTubers could have, and just the kind of engagement. It's one thing to go to a website, and click around and you bounce. It's another thing to, sign up, subscribe, and then show up every week at a specific time to consume the content. And that, that level of engagement, I'm still, it still drives me because of just the amount of influence and influencers that AuDigent works with. But, Big Frame taught me there was more than just music stars. There's more than the music industry in Hollywood and kind of the traditional modes of production, marketing, and distribution. That indeed artists don't need any of that.
Right.
If they can lock in with a platform like YouTube, and now it's more than YouTube, they can achieve real independence and have real freedoms.
And power as well. I mean,
and power.
Yeah.
And then you're not like,
beholden to the big corporations.
Selling out, there are consequences to selling out. It's just the nature of capitalism. So, had a great experience with Big Frame. It was frustrating because, parts of early UPROXX and Big Frame were frustrating because the modes of monetization were nascent.
Right.
As an influencer, you really needed like a brand deal, right? You needed brand sponsorship. Without that, like, you weren't making any money. It's different now.
Right.
And I learned a lot about advertising from that experience. And, I watched the value of blogger content and YouTube content be, commoditized, driven down by technology, okay, by the changing bid dynamics, okay, in programmatic advertising, which were happening, by 2006, certainly through 2010, everything was changing. And, ultimately that led me to co-founding AuDigent, where we work with, we call it the supply side in my business, but that's just a definition for the creative side, the publisher side.
So yeah, just explain to people what AuDigent is, because it's not really a consumer-facing company. So people it might not mean anything, but it touches their lives. So
AuDigent is a technology platform for the sports, entertainment, and lifestyle industries. We work, with a whole slew of companies. Certainly some of the leading music labels, many of the leading publishers, really the entire supply side. And what I mean is like everything, almost every website we can work with, we can enable brands to connect with. We really wanted to create a data platform that was good for, the right people, right? As opposed to everything just being good for a couple of companies. We know who they are. Mm-hmm. We wanted to create opportunities for everybody else. And we've been, the company's about 4 years old, and we've been, very successful. So I think it's, building a tech company is extremely challenging, right? It's one thing building a company full of curators and marketers and promoters. It's another thing building a company, where the tech stack is the personality, right? And where you need to allow people to learn in real time and to become good at their jobs. Like in the beginning, we could not just hire a CTO. Shout out to my co-founder, Matt Griffiths. We had to hire the right senior data engineer and allow them to become that great CTO. And it takes a lot of work. It's amazing. The people that are the most successful are the ones that they take it all in, they listen, they don't talk too much, they absorb it, and they learn, and they learn quickly. Like, you fuck up, you have to look at that.
How do you fix it? Yeah.
Look at that feedback loop. Really look at it closely.
Yeah.
You can't fuck up again.
Yeah, I remember. It's got to be like 5 years ago. We were sitting in Soho House, and you said, "I want to tell you about a company that I'm about to start." And you kept on looking around the room to make sure that no one could hear us. And I'm like, "What's up with this?" I mean, no one's. I mean, and then you told me about it, and I was like, "Well, I'm in, can we invest?"
Yeah.
And Esther and I invested on behalf of Giant Step as well. And, it was, and we just watched your company grow, and it's an incredible thing.
Yeah. You never know when you start, whether it's going to work. I think if you just allow for no other possibility, it works.
Mm-hmm.
You simply you have to see yourself in the future after you succeeded, right? And you need to do everything you can do to take those baby steps, because there's so many things going on in a technology company. The planning tools, everything is precise. Everything's documented, archived, all these tools that everybody's using, stuff we did not have back in 1995, 1996. And, what I've witnessed this year is just how amazing everybody is working together during a pandemic. It's testament to the quality of the people and their ability to learn on the job, and technology in general, that companies like ours were able to grow 300+% year over year, at a time when many companies are struggling. I think everybody has to really look at what's happened in the last year. This is the time to ascend and take your own game to the next level. Like, if you're selling fucking cupcakes at your cupcake shop, it might be time to level up and ship your cupcakes online. Get your Shopify on and go crazy, because that is the future.
Yeah.
We started with influencers getting money because they were lucky and they had a manager that can get them a brand deal, to YouTube and Instagram and Twitch and a few other platforms allowing for direct monetization, more on the creator's terms. And now we're in an age where I don't know if I need an OnlyFans audience to pay my bills. You know, I'm going to set up a store using Shopify.
Right.
And I'm going to
go direct. Yeah.
You know, that we're entering a whole new realm where the influencer is now going to become the e-commerce specialist.
Mm-hmm.
And data is going to drive all of that expansion.
Yeah, the power of data. We only have a couple of minutes left, and I think you were hitting on a couple of good points there. I mean, what do you see in the future? Where do you see all this going?
Well, I mean, listen, we work with you know, quite a few stars, and you know, when a music star wants to team up with like Murakami and release all this limited drop merchandise, you know, working with us, you know, they're going to make a lot of money, right? So I see a lot of that, a lot more of that. I see, you know, more artists building their own brands, making their own, like, you know, I love the idea of scarcity, limited drops, you know, creating that urgency and closing the window after a certain period of time. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. I think it's going to become more a percentage of artists' income. Like, we don't know how this events are going to
reincarnate when they're coming back. Yeah.
Right. So there's things like live tune-in. There's direct to consumer. You know, I see a lot more direct connections being made between artist and creator and their audiences, and you know, that is possible today.
And you know, the last minute, Brian, you know, talk a little bit about your music, because you are creating music.
Yes.
You've gone back to creating music. So
yeah, I mean, listen, I like to make music every day. End of the day is when it works out for me. I'm working on a few projects now. One is called Loom, LLUM. We're about to start publishing stuff. Just imagine, you know, really banging house music with a little bit more of a hip hop drums at those tempos, mixed with, you know, modular synthesis and all these chopped up samples. So look out for that in the next 6 months. And I started making hip hop beats again for the first time in years. So look out for that. That'll be under the pseudonym Tut, T-U-T, Mr. Tut. And I'm gonna go as far as, you know, I'm gonna partner up with some MCs and take it quite seriously.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. I've got about 30 seconds left, so I wanted to thank you, Brian, for this very insightful.
I miss you.
You know, insight. Yeah, I miss you too. Brian's in California. And also, I want to tell everyone that this Tuesday at 5 p.m., we're going to do another Instagram Live with Kevin Lyons. Kevin, not only is he an amazing artist, designer, but he is behind the Giant Step logo, 5 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. R.I.P. Phil Asher, who unfortunately passed away today. We're thinking of his family. And have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Giant Step podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe or follow us on Instagram at Giant Step. Music is by Sinego. Please Please also visit our website giantstep.net to learn more about our award-winning marketing agency.